Hi everyone. I hope you can hear me. My system's being a bit dodgy today, so please let me know if you're having any problems hearing me. I'm going to record it as well, just in case. Oh no, I think we're okay. Seem to be okay. Although I can't actually see the chat at the moment either, so let's just assume we're okay until proven otherwise. Okay, so this is just a very quick one before I go to the gym because I'm not actually trading this at the moment. And I, in fact, closed my shorts last night because I was so bored with watching it. Which obviously meant it was going to fall further, and it probably would. That tends to happen to me as I lose my patience. Excuse me. I lose my patience, and then that's when the actual move happens. And so part of the reason I'm not trading this today is because of what is going on Binance, and that has been all day yesterday as well, actually. So yesterday we had we were having, obviously we had the drop, and there were various walls. Actually, maybe I should go back even further. And then I'm probably going to lose where I am on the chart. So there were various walls that I was saying yesterday, briefly, and I didn't do a full Bitcoin update yesterday, but I made some comments in the chat and in the stream that I wanted to see these walls filled before anything. The low there happened to coincide with a bounce on the CME gap, which is why I closed, because it's a possible support, and like I say, just pure boredom. So we did get a strong initial bounce, but straight back up into supply and then straight back down to the same level, and we had this wall here that remained in place for the rest of the night. And then obviously we've come down again in Asia, and we've got walls repeatedly being put in above us, trying to drive the price lower. And then to the downside, there's still a lot more walls. And I think, you know, possibly part of the issue here, I mean, it might be partly the ETF, but also part of the issue is I think it's not clear where the bounce should be. So obviously yesterday people were looking at the CME gap, and then today it's just messy. Excuse me. Oh, bad timing for coughing. But yeah, so Binance is putting in a lot of walls above. So there's 500 Bitcoin at 339,200, and which is a little bit higher there. But so I think I have this set up such that it will give me a line. So the lines that you see are if there are more than 50 Bitcoin at a particular level. And I'm sorry, within a particular range. So these are $100 ranges. So we'll give you a line if that's the case. And then I have the heat map set up, which gives me a minimum volume of 50, but that's a single trade. So it's like a trades heat map. At least that's my understanding of it. I set this up maybe 3 or 4 years ago, and actually I haven't changed the settings ever since. But that tells me, it tells me generally where there's lots of orders sitting, and then also if there are specific trades at particular prices. I'm not sure if they know if that's a single trade, but it's more at a particular price on the heat map. So that's where you get the thick lines. So again, yesterday what we could see below the price, even after the bounce, is there were just hundreds of green lines all the way down here, which is much more than you would ever see normally, just stretching all the way down. And above, not so much. So you can see it's heavy on the green below, heavy on the red in this area, but not so much once you get a bit higher. I think the heat map only shows for a particular range, so I don't think you see walls like miles away. I mean, this is reasonably far, but that's a historical wall. The other thing is the green and red lines update So whereas the walls that are in previously, you can see when they're hit and taken out, whereas the lines run through because they're not point in time, whereas the yellow is point in time. And then I've got the heat map just set up in colours, so the bigger walls are yellow and the smaller walls are different coloured or more darker colours. But yeah, anyway, because of all this fuckery that's going on, I'm just not really caring too much. I'm assuming, hopefully, we're going to get some sort of a bounce at some stage, because the shorts that I had were in Bitcoin. So I'm hoping to then also sell those back to US dollar at some stage. And then it's just making a judgment call. So from the perspective of how the charts look, like I said, on the US dollar chart, obviously we've just got a mess. So my next zone of interest, I've got the alert not far off, was this sort of 2-3 day, just a little bit lower than where we are now. We have an old monthly levels a bit higher. Yes, it could come off the top of the wicks, etc., etc. So, and it's also very hard to fib this. And well, I don't know, maybe other people know better than me, but you can fib from the bottom of the consolidation to the top, and we're just about to hit the 60, which is great. Or we are in the 61 to 70 area if you're looking at the linear scale. Or do we do it from this lowest wick? It's not a clear wave here. So for me, it's quite hard to fib that. If I fib instead, so I already have a fib that's from the low down there, so let me just take off that local one. But obviously that then, if we're looking for golden pocket on that, we're then looking all the way back down here, and I think I fibbed that from the low after the wick, just purely because the spot exchanges didn't have the same wick. So yeah, and obviously, so the zones are really far away on that lower fib. I might just add in the higher fib levels. So the 23.6 and the 38 are in that area as well, if that's what we were looking at. And again, the linear is still significantly lower. But like I say, so for me, there's a lack of clarity here. So I don't want to just sort of leap into longs, and I'd rather wait for at least hourly or 4-hourly structure in here if it gives it, and if it doesn't, I'm still holding my Bitcoin, so I guess I don't mind that much. But yeah, my alert on this is coming in a bit lower as well. The other concern I have with this, so we do have the confluence on the US dollar dominance pair, and that's coming to the weekly supply. So obviously, yes, I said yesterday I was looking for the breakout on that, which we got, and it's came up into the weekly supply, and it's come higher inside it again. But again, the lack of clarity here of whether we're going to get a specific rejection. We also have the 3-month level. It's quite a lot higher. So that would be up here. So still the possibility of a significant move, and no retracement, because that's crypto for you. However, this is obviously a zone here. It's a 3-day inside the weekly that we're going to look for at least some sort of pullback at this point, or imminently. But it's just not having the confluence there on everything. So US dollar pair being slightly above the monthly level and above those initial zones. Korea just floating in the middle of nowhere. And Korea may be slightly easier to fib though. Like if I just fib from the low of that wick. So again, coming down to the 61.70 zone, but again, would I prefer this all the way down here? Yes, ideally, or at least possibly on this meme trend line. But if it does come all the way down there, then obviously we're going to see the US dollar pair do a much bigger dive inside this zone. So please don't blindly long this entry that I've given here, because it's not high probability off that level specifically. It's more just a general watch this zone, and then obviously we've got CME gaps lower. On the CME chart, we have just hit or just above hitting, so had that CME close higher that I'll delete, and just above hitting the first daily there with some wicks in here. So again, it's more promising to look for a bounce on this, but is the confluence 100% there? No, I don't think so, or at least not for me, not for a high probability long yet. So yeah, just giving this a bit more time. I'll see if it gives me anything later today, and see if any of these walls get pulled out on Tensor, or if they start to be eaten significantly. Other things I've started looking at recently, I saw somebody look at this is the Coinalize website with the long-short ratio, which actually has changed since I looked at it earlier, but I just don't know how reliable this is. This had dropped a lot lower when I saw it earlier, so now it's back up here, so I don't know if there's been a data correction, but not overly useful just looking at that yesterday. And then also Coinalize, looking at the spot CVD aggregator. This gives you the aggregated CVDs for futures, for spot, and for open interest. So, but again, until you start seeing divergences and things, unless you're trading very low time frame, and this is the 5-minute chart, but if I look at the 15-minute chart, are we seeing, I thought we were starting to see a bit of CVD divergence earlier, but not so much on the aggregated. However, Coinbase is showing some divergence, so we might be seeing some buying coming into Coinbase. We're seeing the open interest rising, but again, we've been going sideways since that's happening, so it's not a very easy judgment. If it's rising on the drop, which isn't good, or not good if you're a bull, but it's died off since then. But these indicators I tend to find not great actually on the middle time frames. I prefer them either on the very high time frames or the very low time frames. That's just a personal preference. Then looking at the Binance equivalent, or the bottom section is the same, but just looking at Binance's CVD, again, a little bit of CVD divergence on the Binance chart. So, you know, there might be some promising for a move up. Whether it's going to be the bottom is debatable. Yeah, so I'll try and do an update later today if I see something better, different, or if we get any decent move in New York, which is starting imminently. Ether is another slightly challenging one. Again, look at the confidence, hasn't been there for me as yet. We did get a bounce, so I had mentioned in the stream I put on the detailed chart a possibility of a bounce in this 12-hour, mainly because it was moving so slowly. But then again, like Bitcoin, it bounced at the same time as Bitcoin did on the CME gap, but it wasn't a strong enough one. Then the actual alert that I've had in here for a while is on this weekly. But being very conscious, we are in, you know, the red circle that's been drawn since we were at the lows. You know, we've hit the monthly supply, and you know, the options here are that we, you know, this monthly supply plays out and we fall straight through local demand. We come up for a retest and then we get a bigger drop. Alternatively, you know, this is the first hit on local demand, so we can faff around in here for a while and, you know, either then go higher or then do the drop later. So we're just at a point that, yeah, look for long entries, but be conscious that we're coming out of that supply. We're in, yeah, weekly demand on that. We do have at least the confluence with Korea being at weekly demand too. CME, oh yeah, sort of part of the reason I also had the higher entry on this as a possibility yesterday is because CME hit the weekly earlier, but obviously that's now come fairly deeply into it. So this just needs to be watched a bit longer, but is in an area that's possible for a bounce. The only thing on this, and I was looking back, I have mentioned this in a previous stream, but looking back at this move that we had here, where we had a consolidation and then we had this sort of breakout and then drop straight back through it. And obviously in the current situation, we're coming down slower in this area, but we have this sort of similar consolidation breakout. So it's possible we come back through and take out that consolidation in the current price. And I feel like we did do the same. So again, back on the top of the B wave, or the 2019 mini end of the mini bull. It's bigger picture, but again quite similar. Like both, so it went up and had this consolidation, spiked up, and then came straight back down through it. In this case, it didn't even really get a decent retest afterwards. Obviously, the bull market, it continued up afterwards, but So it's possible that we get this. It's just a question of what bounces we get in the interim, you know, and how much. The major difference with, at least with the 2020 correction, go back to that, is this consolidation hadn't had the low taken out. So again, now we had that wick down, significant wick down back in at the start of January. So we did already take out the consolidation lows there anyway. So again, we might just see some differences from that perspective. We're starting to see a little bit of green coming into it, so maybe we'll get some hope off this later today. But like I say, on all of it, we don't need to FOMO into anything. And yeah, so the other concern on this is that the Ether BTC hasn't hit any demand yet. But that also, I think I made similar comments yesterday on the near update, that it can, you know, if we do get a bounce now and Bitcoin bounces more than Ether, then this can still continue down at the same time. So that's not necessarily a reason not to long Ether if you start to see some structure in here. Yeah, so I think that's about it. I might just have a quick look at so we've got this sort of USD tether dominance. Then we've got the aggregated dominance, which is probably going to be in the same area, yes. And then the aggregated would be USD, which is obviously not relevant now, but has also just tapped up into that supply there. So watch out for a bounce potentially happening, but just be conscious of all those walls and the fuckery that's going on Binance. The total chart, unsurprisingly, has broken that low. Interestingly, is still quite a lot higher relative to the Bitcoin chart, I think. Let me just have a look at that quickly. Yeah, so obviously that's just underneath the consolidation, whereas this now has had a couple of candles significantly below the consolidation, so it's being driven a bit more, i.e. alts are holding a little bit better. That's basically what this is telling us, although arguably maybe that's not the case, maybe because Bitcoin went up more previously, more relatively than total. So but anyway, yeah, so could see a swing failure off the bottom of there, but there's certainly room for that to drop into demand, same as Bitcoin. So don't be too keen to FOMO there. Total 2, also not updated this chart. Breaking down certainly some local demand here, but still in this very choppy, but still in this weekly demand, which is stronger than that weekly demand. So, but again, choppy and messy and not something I really want to preempt. But I still have always said, you know, that I don't necessarily love where this top is, and while it can top there, I still think there is a possibility that we get a bounce and a more of a move on Ether and alts, but I just want to believe it when I see it. And total 3, similar, deeper in the demand, but not broken down yet. But yes, yeah, I have had a fair few alt alerts hit. And others, same situation. So while it feels like a horrible day, it's not really that bad. Not as yet in the grand scheme. You know, if we start seeing this break and then we go up and get the retest, then you're looking for the bigger drop, which could go significantly lower on alts in the whole market. But so far, we haven't had that. And so, yeah, much as you can see over here, you know, you have the big move and then you've got some retesting before you get the bigger drop. So we're still in that phase of retesting, and we still need to break demand for me to think that we're going to have a massive drop. BTC dominance, 3-month demand, and start pushing up. I'll try and look at these more and think about them a bit more later, but just to get a general idea, obviously ETH dominance is dropping, same as Ether BTC, and we just need to see, so ETH BTC and Ether now, the ETH dominance, we just need to see if they're going to pick up demand, because while they've had an extremely strong move, not broken supply, not broken major structure. Others dominance still holding, and DeFi dominance still holding, in fact. Beta could go lower. I just want to see what happens a little bit later today. We're seeing, I mean, there's obviously the stocks have come down quite a lot, and we've got some big earnings coming in as well over the next couple of weeks, which may bring the indices down. And if that does bring the indices down, then it's possible that we get that bigger drop on Bitcoin with it. Although we don't really have the correlation that we've had. Sometimes it picks up and goes back in play when there are bigger moves in the traditional markets. So we have to see. Mara at least is at an interesting level for possible bounce. Riot the same. Hut was a bigger one I'd seen died earlier, but again now at a weekly level, so possibly could get a bounce as well. BTC up is much uglier. That's interesting, so because that sort of can exaggerate the moves of Bitcoin. And obviously that's coming down quite deep into the consolidation now, so that's an interesting one. BTC down is on its way to breaking out, but hasn't yet. So I'll update all these charts properly later, like I say. And ETH up, also fairly big drop, and has come underneath that wick that I was talking about earlier. And ETH down has some space, so that's slightly worrying for Ether, really. Yeah, so be a little bit wary of what you're looking at on Ether. But we can see if these just pick up support. It's possible that Bitcoin picks up at the higher support and this just picks up a lower support. And I've never watched these enough to see if they sort of end up aligning themselves at a later date if they get this far out of structural sync. But that might be an interesting one. I should probably remind myself to look back at that once we've seen a bit more of this play out. Yeah, so anyway, this was just going to be a short stream. There's nothing really. Oh, GBTC, that's probably the only other one I should have looked at but haven't. That's not the right chart. Grayscale. Okay, so again, just still tapping into demand there on the weekly, but again, not broken down. Does actually have, but it has put in a weekly supply here. However nasty these GBTC candles are. So we've got a weekly supply, but we haven't broken weekly demand yet, although it's a fairly nasty, it's kind of hard to judge situation. But yeah, so we're looking really for a bounce today, tomorrow, but certainly this week on this, so it holds the weekly demand, and then to assess what reaction we have when it gets up into this supply area. But that's about it. I will go off to the gym. I will come back later and I'll look at some more alts later this afternoon and see what BTC has done in the interim. Like I say, just be very careful if you're trying to FOMO long and buy every bounce on this, which I'm sure a lot of people are trying to do, but I don't think it's worth it. Quite honestly, not the way the structure's looking. And oh yeah, so on the short side, not something I've thought about in massive detail yet. I think I had this 4-hour supply in here previously, or 4-hour, 8-hour supply there. But one comment I did make yesterday is that, so we've made a new 2-day supply up here. And I was saying if we swing failed the low, then I would expect it at least swing fail the high of the 2-day supply, and we haven't swing failed the low, we've just dropped. But I still think, just knowing Bitcoin, there's a fair chance that I might look at putting an entry there just to watch it when it retests, but there's a fair chance that if we do get a bounce, we'll take out this first 2-day in favour of the higher one. We also have a 4-day supply in here now, so I think there's more confluence for potentially looking for rejection around the high 42s than getting into FOMO-ish around the 41, low 41s. And then obviously we've got the possibility that we just take out this whole zone and go for all the highs, but cross that bridge when we come to it. But this would be my first, I think, decent entry for looking for a short, decent possibility for looking for a short, and as long as if we get lower, because this for me is no man's land. Anyway, I hope that's some help. Don't FOMO. I hope you're being safe, and talk to you later.